How do you create a successful business and a fulfilling life? In 2020, after leaving the corporate world once and for all, I founded my digital agency that replaced a six-figure income within just the first few months. Since then, I've coached thousands of entrepreneurs across the globe to do the same. Now I'm on a mission to teach others how an exceptional life is not only possible, but very achievable through entrepreneurship. Join me in this podcast as I interview industry experts to learn the ins and outs, the do's and don'ts of what it takes to become a great business owner, and share some of the lessons I've learned along the way as well. Thank you for joining me, and let's dive in. All right, everyone, welcome to another episode of the Marketing Mastermind Podcast. I am here with a new friend, Jasmine. And Jasmine, I apologize. I didn't even ask how to pronounce your last name. Is it Lotomau? Lotomau. Okay. I'm sorry. I butchered it. I'm sorry. It's all good. But anyways, okay. Thank you for joining me, though. So excited to have you here. And I'm super excited about our topic today, because we are going into something that is very pertinent for any type of business. But I'm excited that we're talking specifically for agency owners, because a lot of our listeners here on this show come from, the world of marketing. So I'm excited to dive into the depths of that. And really too, for those listening, even in other industries, this is going to be extremely relevant and very valuable. So before we dive into that, a little bit about Jasmine. Jasmine is the CEO of Greenlight Scaling, which is a phenomenal business that helps agency owners with their operations. So we'll dive into that a little bit more. She's the former COO of Agency Lab, which is actually the first place that I was introduced to you, Jasmine, before I even realized it. You've made your marketing coaching over 1,000 different marketing agencies from an operations and client retention perspective. Have an incredible track record of scaling multiple companies past six-figure months and building high-performance teams that thrive without needing the CEO to be involved on a day-to-day basis. What a dream. What a dream. I'm so excited about having you here today, Jasmine. Jasmine is now on a mission to help agencies and consultants scale healthily, enjoyably, and profitably. So thank you for being here and welcome to the Marketing Mastermind.
Thank you so much for having me. It's crazy that we got connected through that other mastermind and then we somehow ended up on another group call together. I think it was for your lead magnet workshop, which was insane. If anybody's listening and you haven't seen that workshop yet, you need to. It's just such a great strategy to increase the value of your company by growing your list and growing your audience and having something that is fully owned by your company and then being able to remarket to it. So that was insanely valuable for me. I know that, my skill set and my zone of genius is in the back end of the business, making things more efficient, making things perform better, keeping clients long-term, not so much on the front end, not so much on the marketing side and the sales side. I would consider myself somewhat of a noob on the marketing side and just different strategies and funnels and copywriting.
Well, it's funny that you say that, because that is exactly why I was so excited to have you on for this episode, because the reverse is true for me. On the operational side of things, I feel like it's a different language a lot of times. I'm like, yeah, I can run any type of campaign, whatever it is, right? But when it comes to the operations side, there's definitely some missing pieces or some gaps there that I feel I'm excited to dive in and talk about those. So before we get into the details and the weeds of that, maybe expand a little bit, Jasmine, and just kind of give some context of your background to this point. How did you become an expert in operations? I joke with this, but really, were you waking up as a 6-year-old saying someday I want to grow up and be a COO? How did that happen?
No, that's a great question. I never even really thought about getting into business growing up. I always wanted to be a performer, and I went to performing arts schools my entire life. But just as I tell everybody who's, looking to find their kind of place in the world or looking to hire team members that are right for the seats that they're putting them in, success leaves clues, and there's hints of what you're really good at throughout your entire life and what you enjoy. And I've always been that kind of person that wants to make things simpler, make things more efficient, make things more organized. Even my kitchen, I remember when we moved in here, I had to reorganize it 3 or 4 times because I'm like, I want the knives to be here because then it's one step away when I'm cutting up my fruits. I want my forks to be on this side and this has to be one reach away. I don't want to take 3 steps. It's little things like that that get me really excited in life in general. And when I started in entrepreneurship, I actually started marketing for martial arts studios. So I had my own marketing agency, grew that to just under 10K per month, invested in a program just like you. And, in that program, I actually got pulled into the team for that consulting company. And in that company, I was able to see the insides and the sort of minute details of how agencies operate from the ground level and where I was at all the way up to 250K, 500K per month. And so I could see what these guys did in terms of their strategies, what were the similarities, what were the differences. And, it was interesting because seeing the insides of these businesses, I could see that no 6-figure per month agency grew the exact same way in terms of tactics. Right? Some people used Facebook ads. Some people used all organic. Some people did no SEO and some people did just SEO. So it was like, and some people grew with 1 team member. Other people grew with 15 team members. And even though those tactics were different, there were still fundamental similarities in terms of strategy. So yeah, just the way that my brain works, trying to figure out how things work, trying to make things better and help, obviously, majority of the people in the program that weren't at that level. I just fell in love with operations and I helped grow our coaching company past 8 figures as well.
That's amazing. That's awesome. And so cool to, in a not quite the same, but, I don't know, my association to that is it's such a interesting and cool feeling. Because when you're in the weeds of it and you're like going through and doing all of these things, you're like, oh, wow, I actually like this. This is really fun. I love strategizing this and I love to nerd out in these areas. And then afterwards, looking back retrospectively and being like, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize I was building a career for myself,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's cool. That's awesome. All right. So I want to dive in to the tactics, really. Right. Of from an operational perspective. And let's first, let's start at level, I guess ground zero, really. What does it mean when we're referring to operations? What does that mean?
Operations at its core is how a company operates.
Perfect.
And that's, via its processes, its systems, its people. Those are usually the 3 core elements of operations. So even at the ground level, even if I only have 1 client, who do I have in my team? It's me. Mm-hmm. And in terms of what I do, my role is comprised of probably marketing, probably sales, some account management, some media buying and fulfillment. But ultimately at that level, I am wearing all those hats and I am my employee. Yeah. Which we can get into that and how that is so critical to make that shift. But you are the person that's in your team. The systems that you use, maybe you use spreadsheets, maybe you're using a Google Doc to manage that client's information. You're obviously using, Facebook Manager or Google Ads Manager or whatever systems to fulfill on that client. So those are your systems, and your processes are, how did you end up convincing that client to move forward with you? What objections did you handle? Once they said yes, how did you send them the payment link, or how did you collect that payment? Or if you're doing a free trial, how did you set the expectations that they would eventually pay you? I think there's a common misconception that operations don't matter until you're at a certain level, but operations exist from the moment that you start a business.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad that you said that. And also too, I'm really glad that you're reiterating that no matter the size of the organization, I mean, for even first getting started, operations, your processes, that is still a thing, right? Even when a solopreneur and you're running, wearing all the hats, that's still something that exists, right? That very much so exists.
Exactly.
So let's maybe, on that next step, how does one go from being that, one person wearing all of the hats to getting to a place where they're ready to, maybe bring on the first team member or bring on that first person? And I'll add some context to this as well, Jasmine, because there are many times, agency owners that I have the opportunity or privilege to work with and coach that get to this point in their business where they say, okay, I think that I'm ready. I think that I'm ready to bring someone on, but I don't want to hire them. I don't want to bring them on and then not have anything for them to do. Or the opposite, right? Have so many things that I don't even know where to start. And so I feel that there is, some steps to take before that. Would you mind maybe diving into that piece a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, again, going back to what I was saying before, and this is a great question, but going back to what I was saying before, even before you bring on team members, even before you invest in systems, as soon as you start a business and you say, I am going to offer services for a price, you are now your own operations manager. And there are operations that exist inside of your company. And as you're saying, you're a one-man show at that point. And I kind of like to think of this as freelancer, territory. And so in order to shift out of freelancer territory into being an actual agency owner and building a business, not just running a business, you first have to make that shift and think of yourself as that business owner. So rather than thinking of yourself as somebody who does marketing, identify what kind of business do I own and what kind of business do I want to build? And in that business that I am eventually working towards, which is, a common strategy for operations, is to set your end target and reverse engineer into my micro targets. So if you know that eventually I want to get to, let's say, 20K per month, that's going to be good. I'm going to be able to eat. I'm going to have a couple of team members probably to help me run the day-to-day. And it's going to be more of a lifestyle business for me. So you set your target at 20K per month. You say, in order for me to hit 20K per month, how many clients is that on average? So you break down the numbers. If I charge $1,500 per client, that's around, what is that? I want to say 15.
I'm bad at math.
12. So 13, close enough. 13, 14 clients around there. And they have to pay you month to month, $1,500 on average. And if I want to have that amount of clients, that probably means that I have to have strategies to acquire them. I have to have a strategy to onboard them with some proper expectations, to get them good results, to maintain that relationship so that they don't leave me for somebody else. But now, you're starting to think of this as an actual strategy, an actual business. You're reverse engineering this into specific targets and actions that have to happen. And now that you've mapped out that strategy, you can take a look at yourself, which it all starts with self-inflection, and say, what are the things that I am going to provide the most value on for the business out of this list of, let's say, 50 tasks over the next 3 to 6 months. And as the owner of a business, I always say that, you're going to be the best closer for your business because you're the one that has the most amount of belief in yourself and your ability to deliver. Whereas you may or may not be the best fulfillment manager. You may or may not be the best person to go in, click in to go high level and plug in these specific workflows. So that's usually the route that I see people take as they start to bring on team members. But again, it starts with having an end target in mind, reverse engineering that, and obviously adding in the more meaningful elements of why do you want to hit that number so that you're motivated to actually show up every single day for that. But then reverse engineer it, identify what are the kind of roles that are living within my business that I'm currently wearing all the hats for. And then based on my strengths and based on what's the biggest value for the company, which pieces should be offloaded from my plate first.
I like that. Yeah, I like that. I feel like they're one of the most powerful skills that you can strengthen as a business owner is the ability to reverse calculate. And I mean, it's for forecasting and operations as well, it looks like. So yeah, I love that. What advice would you give? Because here's the thing, for those of us who have had the opportunity of running a business or doing something like that beforehand, you've got a little bit of an idea of what you want it to look like. But for, your first stab at starting a business and not from nothing, it's hard to build what you don't know what it, build something when you don't know what it's supposed to look like, right? Which is why it's very valuable to have mentors and, coaching programs, mastermind programs, things like that. But what advice would you give to an agency owner who is just starting out and isn't quite sure how it's exactly going to look for themselves? What advice would you give on, being able to kind of start to visualize that?
That's a great question. I mean, I think the simplest answer is get around people who have been at that level. But even then, as you said, or just as we see in the industry, there's no right or wrong way to build a company. There's just, it's a matter of what you want the numbers to look like and what you want the lifestyle to look like. Because, for instance, I have 3 different partnerships that I'm working on right now, all agency owners, all in different industries, and they all have 3 different whys behind where they're trying to build this company and what their objective is. And because of their different why, I would structure their company very differently. So identify your personal why for growing the company. Do you want to have this sit on the side and just be running on its own completely? Do you enjoy the fun of marketing and you would want to still run it? You want to still be involved. You want to grow the team. Maybe not needed as much on the day-to-day, but you still want to be that strategic leader inside of the company. Do you want to build this to just sell it down the line? Right, There's so many things that you can do with a business of this kind of level. And I think it all starts with, what do you want your personal life to look like? If you know, and you're in a state of wanting to get to the point where you can just have kids and spend as much time with those kids and not have to work all the time, then your business is going to look and operate very differently. Even what you offer might be very different than somebody who is 18, living with their parents, does not have many obligations financially, and they can go all in and they can take big risks. Yeah. And so I think it's going to what your point was, getting around mentors that know those differentiations between strategy and how to kind of bring strategy and personal obligations and goals together, as well as just internal, again, self-awareness. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. And I think that there is massive value in, just being able to look at different situations of, like you're saying, like those around you, right? Mm-hmm. Whether that is in the context of being part of a specific program, or even just having other individuals that you talk to on a regular basis that are also running an agency, but they're at this level or they're doing these things, right? One thing that I'll also add, because again, I want people to get as much value on this call and be able to go and execute. A framework that I like to operate from is, the more that you put onto yourself in terms of responsibility as an agency, the higher the risk, the higher the reward, but also the higher level of involvement and the higher level of systems and potentially labor costs. Done for you labor costs tend to be higher. Whereas when you start to put more responsibility on the client's end, let's say you're doing consulting rather than done for you marketing, your labor costs can be lower because you don't need as many team members to work with 50 consulting companies or consulting clients as you do with 50 done for you clients. So it's a higher operational efficiency, but the rewards may not be as high because consulting clients ultimately have to take ownership and they have to take action on the information that you give them. And if they're not taking action on it, or let's say that they don't have enough time to even do it, you're limiting your ability to close those clients. And eventually they may pause, even though you have a great product, simply because of logistical reasons.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's so true. And I mean, that applies like in a lot of different types of industries or services that you could provide, but specifically as an agency, I mean, there are a lot of different ways that can be applied.
If you were trying to build something more lifestyle, I wouldn't do like hey, I'm going to close all your leads and I'm going to, I'm going to do all the advertising and all the sales, and all you do is pay me this. That's going to take a lot of energy, effort, team members, processes, systems, as opposed to something that is a little bit more, we'll send you the leads, we help you to follow up. We can install this AI bot that can help you to follow up, but ultimately it's your responsibility to close them. You're going to have a lot less of a operational drag on that product as compared to the one that we discussed before.
Right. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. That's really great insight. Okay. So I'm curious just on the side of like, I guess, well, I was going to say tech, but more of just like the framework or method that you prefer, because I feel that, you could go into any type of large corporation or organization, and they're probably going to have a very unique way of how they operate and what their process looks like.
Right.
So I'm curious if there is a specific type of like breakdown or framework that you prefer or that you recommend for agencies who are, let's say, delivering, specific types of done for you services.
Yeah. And by breakdown, do you mean team structure or just in general, everything all together?
In general, all together. Yeah.
All of it. Yeah. So for done for you, again, it depends on your model. If you're leaning more on the side of retainers, as opposed to pay per performance, something along the lines of like pay per lead or pay per show or percentage of revenue share, there's minute differences in how you would want to grow those two and what's really necessary to be able to scale. But at a base level, systematically, what you want to have is generally, you really have 4 departments inside of your company, really 3. There's your marketing that attracts or creates opportunities. There's your sales that converts those opportunities into paying customers. And then there's your operations, which is everything from client delivery to client conversations and relationship building to the systems that make everything happen and keeping everything in flow. And that's really the core 3 functions of the business at a smaller scale, 0 to 10K to 20K, 30K. And in terms of how you would want to structure that, usually, like I said, the person that starts the company is usually the best salesperson for it. Even if you don't have sales experience, as you learn those frameworks, you're going to have the highest conviction about your specific product and your services than somebody else who comes into your business and may or may not set the proper expectations or may not know exactly how to talk to your audience. If you're starting everything from the ground up, I would definitely recommend investing in that sales skill set. In terms of team members that I usually recommend to hire first, it's usually somebody to help with the onboarding of clients. The first initial 30 days of your client journey are also the most time consuming because everything is being built from scratch. Even if you have some automations that go off and say your sublocation for go high level gets automatically duplicated, there's still a lot of relationship building and foundation building in that specific relationship and that specific client's journey that happens on the front end that you don't necessarily have to keep doing for months 2, 3, 4, 10 down the road. This is when really your client is just trying to affirm that I made the right decision. And so while most people say that the sale happens on that call when they give you the card, the sale really is happening for that initial 30, 60-day stretch. Just as when you get in a relationship and you start dating somebody, you're still kind of feeling them out. Who is this person? How do they deal with, strangers? How do they handle stress? Things of that nature. It's like kind of the dating stage. Mm-hmm. So yeah, usually it's hiring somebody to help you with the onboarding and more of the technical aspect, maybe setting up campaigns. If you're working with one industry or on one specific product and you've kind of productized how you deliver that service, then it makes it a lot easier for you to delegate, which is why it's so important to make that decision early. And, you set yourself up to bring somebody in that can follow that process and that can get everything in place. And then in the same way that I learned by seeing the insides of all my businesses and my clients, they will also learn, and your team member will get that much better and continue to optimize your onboarding processes and your product based on what they're saying, because that is their entire role.
Yeah. Yeah, that was awesome. That was a really good breakdown. In fact, I wrote a couple of notes down as you were explaining that.
Yeah. So hiring, that was just the hiring piece. So that's hiring, usually onboarding first, or somebody to help with fulfillment. I would definitely start them on onboarding, because learning how the campaign structure works makes it easier for you to teach them how to optimize later on. And then in terms of systems, I definitely recommend a project manager, just to keep tasks simple. It's not necessarily a need to have in terms of a paid tool. You can definitely get something that's free. I know that ClickUp's Unlimited Forever plan is free, and that works for the beginning stages, or even just using Sheets works as well. The only thing with Sheets is that, it won't send you reminders that things have to happen for specific clients. So it does get a little bit tedious and inefficient at scale. But project manager, CRM for the same reason, sales side, and just go high level. You're going to use it for your clients most likely. So might as well use it for your company as well. And both of those tools have so many things built into them that you can really just use those two tools in terms of bringing on clients and fulfilling on clients, right, as well as like something like Google Drive to keep storage in place. But yeah, go high level. You can build your websites, you can build your funnels, you can build your sales pipeline, you can build automations, workflows. You can talk to your clients there. If your clients are already the type to use SMS and email to communicate, like for instance, doctors hate trying to use Slack because they don't use it ever. They communicate with all their vendors over email. So you might as well set up a sub-location for just communicating with your partners. And every time you onboard them, put them into that location, and then, manage your client communication on that platform, keep it organized. And then eventually down the line, when you hire somebody to take over communication, all of that's in a pretty CRM that they can step into and have all the context for.
That's a great idea. Yeah, that's really smart. Makes sense.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, that's super useful too, to have kind of an outline of the areas to be watching. And one of the things that really stood out to me as well, Jasmine, that I think that when we think about operations or we think about the processes, I think oftentimes it's tied to, at least as an agency owner, it's tied to, okay, the fulfillment, like what's the process for the fulfillment, right? But one of the things that you mentioned that I really liked is that part of that process, part of that operation is also what the client's experience is in the first 30 days, the first 60 days, right? And really making sure that is a great experience, because people, just in general, people are not going to remember the minute details. What they are going to remember is how you made them feel, right?
Absolutely.
So that's a powerful one. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, so now I want to talk on the flip side of this, right? Let's say as a business owner or an agency owner, you've gone down a ways, you've started building things, you've kind of band-aided things together a little bit as new things happen. Jasmine, I saw you cringe a little bit.
I've just seen it so many times. It's
sure.
necessary. Yeah. Time is of the essence. The thing that kind of I see a lot of people struggle with is that once you get to a certain benchmark, usually around 15K, 20K, sometimes a little bit later, is you get to this awkward teenager phase of business where you're wearing all the hats and you're not doing as great in all of them. You're just kind of mediocre at everything. You're a mediocre tech wizard. You're a mediocre account manager. And it's just because you're doing all of them. You can't focus and improve and solely dedicate yourself to getting better at one of them. And so anyway, that's kind of what you reminded me of, is just that awkward teenage phase of I'm doing all the things and I'm struggling because I'm wearing all these hats and I'm not maybe the best at all of them. But were you given the opportunity to fully focus on one thing, you would be. And ideally, you get to the point where that one thing that you focus on is just being the CEO and the visionary and the CMO and crafting new offers for the company. And you'd have a team to kind of follow along.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's perfect. And I'm glad that you jumped in there too, because that's exactly what I wanted to dive into is what are some of those pitfalls maybe, right? That you see frequently with, the clients or the agencies that you guys work with. What are some of those, I don't want to call them mistakes, but maybe band-aids, right? Of like that oftentimes, if done a different way or a better way from the get-go would make it much smoother to grow.
Yeah. I mean, a couple things come to mind, but there are really two fundamental causes. So the few things that come to mind is, just hiring people because you needed to bring somebody on and you reached out to people, you found 5 people on Fiverr, you kind of looked at their stuff. This one looked the best, bring them on. And same thing with systems. Like I looked at all these ones, Monday looked the best. I signed up for it, put stuff in a random spreadsheet. And then for each of my team members that I bring on, they have their own list and everybody manages their projects that way. That's just how it is. And I think the core fundamental thing that's not happening here, and the mistake that happens, is that rather than getting to the core of the issue, or in operations, what we call the root cause, and doing a root cause analysis of why are these things not as organized the way that I need them to be, or root cause analysis of, what are all the things that I'm doing in this role, so that when I hire somebody, they have a full picture and full understanding of what they need to be responsible for, and I can gauge whether they would be really good at it. So I think it's just intentionality at the core of it. Number one is taking the time to kind of map out the strategy prior to making the jump, which, on the other end, making the jump is also what makes us good entrepreneurs. So it's definitely something that everybody goes through, and it's something that all of us have to learn eventually. But in terms of getting out of that cycle, once you've realized you're in it, it's a matter of being intentional. And again, self-awareness. What things have I kind of just stitched together because that's the way that I needed it to be at the time? What things have I built just to solve a problem and to kind of take care of something for the meantime? And, as I double this company, a good question I like to ask is, if we were to 10x this company, or if we were to 5x this company, what would break? And if they say everything, I'll be like, then everything needs to be rebuilt. All of it. So yeah, I'd say that's a core pitfall right there, is just a lack of intentionality, lack of strategy behind scaling. It's more so just growth rather than scale. And then the second thing is, actually, there's 2 more. Second thing is focus. Yeah. As we grow and as we become successful, more doors open to us. So a client might say, hey, I want you to come in and start doing all of these other things for me. But it might mean that our team, or I myself, am having to dedicate an extra 10, 20 hours to this one client. It might limit my ability to grow my company, but at the end of the day, it's a shiny object syndrome. So the ability to say no is another muscle that has to be strengthened as you grow, as you become more successful. And I love that Alex Hormozi talks about this too. He talks about the season of no. And it's definitely relevant. Every time that our business hit a ceiling, whether it was, one of the agencies I was working with, or whether it was Agency Lab and Joel, it was usually because we saw this shiny object or this specific opportunity. Mm-hmm. And, rather than sticking with what was working and running the full play, we pivoted. Mm-hmm. And the company wasn't strategically set up for that pivot.
Yeah, that's interesting. Thank you for sharing that too, because that resonates on a personal level quite a bit.
Oh yeah, same. And then the last thing that I noticed in terms of pitfalls is the ability to let go. Sometimes we want to grow that company. We want to be the person that just has my team do everything, and I just clock in and I see that we got 5 sales while I was on my vacation, and all of our clients are giving us amazing testimonials, and we got 6 new Google reviews. But then when it comes to actually letting go of talking to the clients, when it comes to actually letting go of the campaigns and seeing that they're not performing because our team members have to learn, they have to grow, they have to make mistakes, then we almost kind of latch back on. And it's us. And a lot of times it comes from 2 different things. One of 2 things. One, it's from the fear of something not going right, or it's from the fear of it going right and it not being a result of us.
Interesting. I've never heard.
So maybe this person is going to be better at this than even I was. Yeah. And a lot of us as entrepreneurs, we have to have, somewhat of a high confidence and an ego sometimes, because that's what it takes to do something crazy like start a business like this.
Sure.
But then, when you have people in your team who are performing way better or doing insane things, I have seen that happen as well.
Yeah.
But the ability to let go of things and to let people make mistakes on behalf of your company is very scary. But it's also what's necessary to grow. Is creating more leaders and creating more strategic thinkers in your company to replace the intellectual value that you provide to the company. If you want to be able to step out, you need people who can step in and do just as well, if not better.
Yeah, that's perfectly said. I love that advice. So this transition actually flows perfectly into something that you guys offer at Greenlight Scaling. So maybe let's switch gears a little bit here as we're wrapping up our conversation, Jasmine. And what I was going to bring up is, whether you are in a place as an agency owner or business owner, whether you are in a place where you are just starting out, or in, what we talked about on the latter end of that, of like, all right, I've been running things to this point and it's going okay, but I'm feeling stuck because of this, and this, right? How can someone do, or how might someone go about doing that analysis and talk about, if you wouldn't mind, talk about what you guys offer with your agency health assessment and what that looks like a little bit.
Yeah. That's a great question. I think we started to touch on this a little bit earlier in terms of doing a self-audit of sorts, or just a self-analysis of what's going on in the business, where is all my time going? And so if I were to give you a tactical, without my resource that I'm going to give away, a tactical piece of advice on how to actually analyze what's going on in your business, I would say start with a time audit and put it in different buckets in terms of, again, going back to those hats that people mostly wear. Usually that's the fulfillment hat, which is everything campaigns. There's the account management hat, which is everything client communication and project management. There's your sales hat, which is everything actually following up with customers, prospective customers, hopping on sales calls, doing intros. And then there's the marketing side of, posting content and maybe running paid ads. And just start with those 5 buckets and look at your calendar, start time blocking, or at least get a good estimate of how much time you're spending in each of those buckets. And then in terms of analysis, again, going back to the highest value to the company, it's always going to be on the sales and marketing side. And so identify how much time is being spent on the back end and how can you minimize that per client so that you can continue to scale it up, or how can you delegate as much as possible? That would probably be the best, easiest, simplest way in terms of doing that analysis. But if you want the tactical, hire this person, try doing this, implement this system, you guys can check out my agency health assessment. Our team did an amazing job, and essentially every single answer will generate an entirely customized response to you. And so it's just a 10 question assessment. It'll ask you how your company currently operates. And based on how you guys are currently doing things, it will populate suggestions on things that you can implement, processes, systems that you can strategically build. And it'll even give you suggestions of what we use. And that will give you a good game plan. And I would also recommend taking that assessment maybe a couple of times a year, maybe every quarter, every other month, so that you can see where you guys are at and how you guys are progressing as a company.
How cool. I'm excited to take that. Like, that sounds such a cool resource. That's awesome.
I'm pumped. And it's very much at the beginning stages. So, it's definitely, I'm open to feedback from everybody, but I want to take this assessment to the next level where you'll be able to get all of the customized resources. And then on top of that, every week we're going to send out resources based on your responses and where your growth areas are to everybody in our email list. So definitely be on the lookout for that too.
I love that. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that, Jasmine. And thank you for sharing your insight and your obvious expertise and passion for this part, this very important part of any successful business. I really appreciate that. Before we wrap up today, I'm curious, what is maybe one piece of advice, the top piece of advice that you would give to an agency owner who is just feeling stuck and doesn't really know where to start?
Give yourself grace.
I like that.
I think we tend to be hard on ourselves, especially when we're overperformers and we like to be good at everything that we do. And we know that there's a way. We see that other people are doing super well, but comparison is a thief of joy. So give yourself grace. Everybody that you're seeing achieve different levels of success have also had a very different experience. For instance, I've been doing this for 5 years. I've been in this space. And even if you've been in the space for a lot longer, I've had mentors of people that have grown hundreds of companies, and I kind of tapped into their experience and all of that they've been able to achieve. So definitely don't fall into the pitfall of comparison unless it's just to increase your level of confidence in yourself and ability to do it yourself too. So be gracious with yourself and just take it one step at a time. There's only so much that we can do. And as long as you're making your every effort and you're leveraging all of the resources available to you, like Hilary's podcast, like the agency health assessment, that's all that we can ever ask for ourselves. So that would be my big piece of advice. And one other thing is an amazing piece of advice that I got from one of my mentors a couple of years ago. And this may be very, very off, like very, very far off, but everybody needs therapy. And it may not even be from a perspective of fixing something that's going on, but just from a matter of managing stress, managing anxiety. I like to use this app called Bloom. And I don't know if there's a free version. I think the version I have is like $15 a month. But every day I type in how my day went, what I'm feeling, if I'm feeling anxious about finances, if I'm feeling anxious about a new hire I made, and I can type that in, and then a suggestion, very similar to the agency health assessment, it will automatically populate things that I can try and exercises and, kind of help me to reframe my mind and help me to be, where I'm at and understand that I'm doing my best, and also give me strategies to move forward without feeling, necessarily overwhelmed or, or like I'm in a losing battle. So if you're really struggling and you feel like giving up, know that you have resources at your fingertips and that, there are people out here that want to help.
Yeah. Yeah. I appreciate you saying that. That's such good advice. I mean, especially as an entrepreneur, very easily in the world today can feel isolating at times.
Absolutely.
You're like head down focused, shutting things out, right?
So much screen time, so much dopamine and comparison. And it's so easy in the agency game to compare yourself to the, I just hit 5K and then you see somebody else hit 50K and for you to fall into that trap and, to feel like I'm spending 10, 12 hours on my business every day and it's not moving. What am I not doing? But know that even though they say, and I do agree in a sense that your business is a reflection of you, it's not necessarily a reflection of your downfalls. It's more so a reflection of something that you can learn. And to really tune into your business is going to help you to get out of that in terms of like a tactical piece of advice. Again, get back to the root cause analysis and figure out what specifically is breaking and what patterns am I seeing? And then what could be indicative or what could that be indicative of in terms of a lesson that I haven't learned? And just don't stop. How many times did it take Einstein to invent the light bulb? That's what everybody that is an entrepreneur and everybody that is a genius in a sense, or not, it wasn't Einstein, by the way. It was definitely not. It was Edison. I just realized I said Einstein.
Wasn't it?
But yeah, it's Edison, Einstein, all of these guys that have achieved insane things. Ford, Elon Musk, if you guys haven't seen his documentary, he almost went bankrupt trying to get that rocket into space. But it's the resilience that's going to set you apart. So don't give up, use the resources that you have and give yourself grace.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for doing this episode with me, Jasmine. It's been so much fun. And for those of you listening, if you would like to get in touch with Jasmine, learn what she's doing, get access to the agency health assessment, see what Greenlight Scaling is up to, those links will be available in the show notes. So thank you so much, Jasmine. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for joining me for another episode of the Marketing Mastermind. If you took away any little golden nuggets or took down a mental note of any pieces that you loved from this episode, it would mean so much to me if you wouldn't mind sharing this with a friend, sharing it on your social media, or if you feel so inclined, rate and review this podcast. That is the best way to show your love and support and to get the podcast out there to more listeners. So I greatly appreciate it from the bottom of my heart, and I will see you on the next episode.